Feeling hits jam from whiteloaded.com.
Ndiyavuma ndikhubekile kwigraf intuthu emehlweni am beningayazi zosuswa ubani beningayazi zosuswa ubani ndiyavuma ndikhubekile mna kwigrava intuthu emehlweni am beniyayazi zosuswa ubani beniyayazi zosuswa ubani
Another hits jam from whiteload.
Tandiwe
Thando phela sihlale sibonisane singayeka umhlaba sihlukanise qala siwamina nawe baby kodwa sihlala thina sibambile ewe emhlabeni kunzima akufuni ukuphila ngaphandle kwakho Thandiwe Thandiwe ngiyandithanda Celuka phele labangani bakho thembe nihleba mabananyane Bengithe ndifuna sitshade bathi kuwe jomunga ngami Xa ubuza wayayay bathi bona akanamali Thembe nihleba Dicela uhlalo nenyani Mendite ndiyakuthanda nawe wathi uyandithanda Celuka phele abangani bakho thembe nihleba mabananyane
His Excellency, the Ambassador Ruben E. Brigety II, Ambassador of South Africa from the US, Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Head of the College of Humanities here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, US Consul General, Ms. Anne Denay, His Royal Highness Prince Africa Zulu, members of the executive management at UKZN, including Ms. Noma Zondo, Executive Director for Corporate Relations, and I also saw Professor Mudau, who is seated there, who's the DVC for Agriculture, Engineering, and Science. His Worship, the Mayor of Umgeni, Councillor Christopher John Papas, Ms. Ella Gandhi, academics and professionals, the head of the School of Education here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and I will be directing the program this afternoon. The University of KwaZulu-Natal is deeply honored to be hosting this historic event focused on transformational leadership and change. We're delighted to be hosting this event on this particular campus, the only single school campus at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, whose primary mission is providing an excellent quality and world-class education that aspires to transform our students for the advancement of society. We are particularly honored to be hosting the highest ranking diplomat in the United States mission in South Africa, His Excellency, the Ambassador, Dr. Ruben E. Brigety II. A distinguished diplomat with a deep love and passion for education, Dr. Brigity's illustrious career paints a picture of a man who not only speaks about change, but lives it through his daily actions and deeds. His choice of UKZN, and I must say that I've been informed that he immediately upon his appointment, 2 weeks after his appointment, I learned, Your Excellency, that you said you wanted to come to UKZN first. And I think UKZN deserves a round of applause for that. We also note that this is the first time in the history of this campus to have a sitting US ambassador delivering a speech. I also believe this is the case for the merged University of KwaZulu-Natal. We're deeply honored and graced by your presence, sir. Thank you very much for coming through and engaging us today. In terms of the protocol and the running of the program today, we're going to prioritize a flowing program. This means I'm going to offer very little in the form of summaries after each speech, because the aim ultimately is for you to engage the ambassador today. This program is being live streamed through YouTube and Facebook. We want to welcome everyone who's joining us online. We intend to be very inclusive in the engagement today, so we will be able to take all questions, or not all, some of the questions that are going to be posed online, and there is somebody sitting there who is going to send them to me, and I will facilitate the discussion in that manner. With these very few comments, let me offer a word of welcome and allow you to settle through an outstanding melody that is going to be offered by Zawadi Yamungu, who is an alumni of the African Women in Entrepreneurship Program of the US and a major collaborator of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes up.
KwaZulu senzeni zinyanele ndlu baba kuyasesabulawa baba kuyasesabulawa baba kuyasesabulawa Jojo soneni zinyanele silwane ubongisiza mlabo khanda izinhlendla awuyake mkhonto awukhanda izinhlendla ngisize mabhala bhala ngenzipho insizwa kabanile nezawugigijima insizwa yomuntu magiye gijima umuhle yebi amagiya ngewisa insizwa yenkosi umagiya ngemvubo KwaZulu senzeni zinyanele ndlovu musho yebi amasiphula kamamba musho yebyandlela kasompisi musho yebyamnyama nakanqengelele bathi sala kutsheni sala kunyenyezela bathi ubhidele mathetha nangezinyembezi unje ngelikaphiko ngwasebulawini inyathi lehambise ngamemazibuleni njengomzingela wamfika nosebenza indlu umjokana kandaba obedliwa ngamanxasa odla umfazi umkasukuza wadla usukuza intana yakhe wadla mahamule kamlomo wadla mabebatha unkokhela umsikazi kamdemoshe engabo kenzane ngamasamlila lapha mhlambi yabantu khoniseleyo umashwabada kanonqanda kanonsele washwabada izindlovu zamabodle ngamakhasi wazi izimfe ezimbili kwaNtsondomba nikhamba likhipha selilinya sekhala lokwehlulwa bathe kwaba kuyasesa bulawa basixolisa udonga kwaba kuyasesa sabulawa ngela kaZulu kwaba kuyasesa sabulawa sabulawa sabulawa. That was the rendition by Princess Constance Magogo Gadinozulu, the first song that I did. Now, this is my composition about African beauty, or just loving yourself as you are. So it's kind of give a boost, confident boost, self-esteem, high self-esteem, mostly to the ladies. Mawubani ndwele zami zingome ngoba zinhle. Mawubani ndwele zami zingome ngoba zinhle. Mawubani bala lami lingome ngoba lihle. Mawubani bala lami lingome ngoba lihle. Ibala lami lihle, amabele ami mahle, bathi fika yami inhle, isinqe sami sihle, ukuhamba kwami kuhle, isitho sami sihle, ibala lami lihle, mina nginsundu futhi ngimuhle. Ay 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 ngaze ngamuhle. Ay 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 awubani ndwele zami zingome ngoba zinhle. Ngoba zinhle we mawubani bala lami yele ngome ngoba lihle ke wo hey mawubana ibala lami lingome ngoba ngimuhle we bathi ibala lami linjani lihle bathi amabele ami anjani mahle bathi umkhaba wami onjani muhle bathi kodwa ifika yami hey yinhle ngifuna ukuthi isishwapha sami ke sinjani sihle bathi futhi isinqe sami sinjani sihle noma ngabe imqondo yami nami nginayo mihle kodwa bathi ubhetelwa mi ke lunjani luhle bathi isitho sami oh sihle bathi igwegwe lami linjani lihle kodwa ibala lakho linjani lihle zona inwele zakho noma ungayifakile frontal zinhle athi ngimuhle 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 hle 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 Siyabonga.
Wow, 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 wow. Was that an amazing performance or what? And Zawadi, umculo wakho. Well done. Really beautiful, beautiful rendition there. Thank you. I think what I like about it is, and I did say I wasn't going to summarize anything, but I was just so moved by this music, it's just the modernization or modernizing of Amahubo. Songs that we've heard for decades, but that we've forgotten about. Beautiful, beautiful, well done. Ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, I would like to request the Deputy Vice Chancellor and the head of the College of Humanities, Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize, to come forward and welcome us. We've been sitting here smiling and laughing and clapping hands for Zawadi, but we have not really heard the man of the house coming through to welcome us to this event. Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize is the Deputy Vice Chancellor and head of the College of Humanities, like I've said. He's a professor of psychology who obtained his Bachelor of Arts cum laude at the then University of Natal. He went on to complete a Master of Arts degree as a Fulbright Scholar, Your Excellency, at the University of Iowa in the United States, and thereafter he completed a PhD here at the University of Natal before its merger. He was formerly the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities here at UKZN and is a former president of the South African Humanities Deans Association. He's been a Bram Fisher Visiting Scholar at Oxford University and a Moody Visiting Scholar at the University of Michigan. He's a highly accomplished scholar who has published articles both locally and internationally focused on African psychology, African languages, and mental health and ethics. And here at UKZN, he's most popularly known by his fantastic doctoral academy that is launched in the College of Humanities that has transformed the college here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Professor Thabo Msibi, who's also the Dean and the head of the School of Education. His Excellency, United States Ambassador to South Africa, Ambassador Ruben E. Brigety II, U.S. Consul General in Durban, Ms. Anne Linney, officials from the U.S. Embassy, members of the executive management of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, officials from government, His Royal Highness, Prince Africa Zulu, staff and students, guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. It is with immense pleasure and honor that we welcome Ambassador Ruben Brigety II to our university today. Dr. Brigety is a well-known and well-traveled diplomat and leader who has served in many prestigious positions and institutions. Most importantly, Ambassador Brigety is a distinguished academic who has held several prestigious positions. We count among these him having served as the 17th Vice Chancellor of the University of the South, and prior to that, having served as the Dean of the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. We are truly grateful that Ambassador Brigety has chosen our university as the stage for what will no doubt be an insightful speech today. Before proceeding, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend warm greetings from our Vice Chancellor, Professor Nana Poku, and our executive management team. Although Professor Poku would have loved to attend this significant event, prior commitments have prevented him from being here. Ambassador, your visit to our university could not have come at a better time. In just a week, we will celebrate our autumn graduation, probably conferring degrees and diplomas upon over 9,300 graduates. These individuals are poised and equipped to drive transformative change in our communities, our country, and the world. The pivotal role of higher education institutions in fostering transformative change cannot be overstated. As a center of knowledge generation and dissemination, we are committed to driving transformative change through diverse programs, research projects, and collaborations. We believe in the centrality of partnerships in the pursuit of this commitment. The University of KwaZulu-Natal has a long history of working collaboratively with the US mission in South Africa to advance transformative change. A recent example of such collaboration includes the US-South Africa Expanding Academic Literacy Project, based here in the School of Education, which received funding of $98,484 US from the US mission to support first-year students with academic literacy development in 2022. Another important collaboration is the United States-South Africa Racial Justice Fellowship Program, also funded by the US government and also hosted by the School of Education here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and Teachers College, Columbia University, New York City in the US. This program aims to develop the next generation of racial justice scholars in South Africa and the United States. A total of 24 master's and PhD students will be supported through a 9-month fellowship program that will see them being taught by some of the best racial justice scholars globally. Furthermore, Ambassador, your visit comes shortly after we have unveiled our ambitious 10-year blueprint, the 2023 to 2032 strategic plan of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. This roadmap will guide our university's development over the next decade, and we are confident that it aligns with the topics you will be addressing today. Of the 5 goals in the plan, I would like to highlight goal number 4, which talks about the high impact of societal stakeholder community engagement, and goal number 5, which is targeted internationalization. The university aims to become an international exemplar for pioneering civil collaborations that deliver health, social, environmental, and economic benefits for all, with a clear sense of place and historical context. We also aim to integrate internationalization into our university's quest to become a world-class African institution. Initiatives like the Racial Justice Fellowship Program exemplify our commitment to internationalization, emphasizing the importance of fostering meaningful connections and collaborations that span the globe. Before I conclude, Ambassador, when we were doing the walkabout of the campus, I did indicate that it was going to rain. And as we were walking to this lecture hall, I did realize that indeed there were a few drops or drizzles that had come down, signifying that this campus and this city is extending indeed a very warm welcome to your presence here, as well as your entire delegation. In conclusion, we eagerly anticipate the wisdom and insights Ambassador Brigety will share with us today. Thank you once more for joining us, and we look forward to thought-provoking engagements. I thank you. Ngiyabonga.
I am certain that you now feel very warmly welcomed. I would now like to request the Consul General in Durban, Ms. Anne Linné, to come forward and introduce the ambassador to us. Anne Linné is the Principal Officer for the U.S. Consulate General in Durban, South Africa. And prior to her posting, she was the Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Nouakchott, Mauritania. Her previous overseas tours include assignments in Cape Town, Islamabad, Lahore, Shanghai, and Dubai, and she has served in Washington twice, most recently in the South and Central Asia Bureau, Joint Executive Office, and Elena Career at the Foreign Service Institute as a Deputy Coordinator for Foreign Service Officer Orientation during 2008 to 2010. We welcome Ms. Anne Linné to introduce the ambassador. Thank you.
Sani Bonani. I'm so excited to be here today, partly because I'm thrilled to be on the campus at UKZN, but I'm also thrilled for the reason that we're all here today, to hear Ambassador Brigety speak. Before I turn the mic over to him, I'll tell you a little bit about him, but I also will clarify that had I known I was following Zawadi, I would have perhaps changed the order of the program. The last time she and I shared a stage, I went first and she went second. She's a tough act to follow. As the Dean mentioned and the DVC mentioned, we're so proud of the relationship that we have with UKZN, with all of the campuses at the university, and all of the colleges and all of the faculties. This is a relationship we've had for a very long time, and I look around the room and I see so many friends, so many partners, and so many collaborators. Many of you are graduates of the university, some of you are still students, and we hope that that relationship continues. One of the reasons I'm excited today to introduce Ambassador Brigety and give you all the chance to get to know him is I think that what you're going to hear him talk about today lines perfectly with UKZN's motto, Inspiring Greatness. I've had the benefit of working for Ambassador Brigety for 10 months, but I've known him for several more years from his previous roles. And I have to tell you, especially for you new graduates and students in the room, I hope at some point in your career you have the opportunity to work for someone as inspiring as Ambassador Brigety. This is a man who has deep integrity, deep commitment to improving the world that he lives in and the world that he works in. But beyond that, beyond the work that he does with his team and externally representing the United States, he's also someone I have a tremendous amount of respect for personally. You heard from the DVC some of his academic accomplishments. He is a graduate of a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. He holds an MPhil and a PhD from Cambridge. He's one of the smartest, most educated people I know. But he's also a fourth-generation educator, which I'm sure he'll allude to in his remarks. And as a result, he knows the importance of education. He knows how much it can transform a family's trajectory. And I think one of the things the DVC alluded to the fact that the ambassador was the president of the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee. But I think one of the key details to understand about that is that he was the president from 2020 to 2021 as COVID was unfolding and during peak COVID. Everyone in this room was deeply impacted, particularly in the education sector. Nothing has uprooted the education sector more probably than COVID. And he feels, from a different perspective perhaps, but a perspective nevertheless, the experiences you've all had. He's also the proud father of someone heading off to university in the fall, so he will soon be looking for tips to how to keep his son focused on education. And most importantly, he's a proud native of Jacksonville, Florida. So with that, I'll turn the microphone over to my boss, Ambassador Ruben Brigety. Thank you.
Deputy Vice Chancellor for Humanities, Professor Mkhize, Dean and Head of School of Education, Professor Mzibi, Executive Director of Corporate Relations, Ms. Zondo, His Royal Highness Prince Africa Zulu, to Mayor Chris Pappas of Mgeni Municipality, Ms. Ella Gandhi, Chair of the Gandhi Development Trust, scholars and students, members of the media, and distinguished guests. Sanibonani. Johnny. Good afternoon. And to our sister for that amazing musical performance, Yebo! In the United States, we call that black girl magic. Well done. It's great to be here with all of you today. As a former dean and vice chancellor of universities, to be in front of a group of students again, I feel very much at home. First, although he is currently on travel, I want to extend my thanks and gratitude to Vice Chancellor Poku for honoring my request to come to speak with you today. I thank as well Deputy Vice Chancellor Mkhize, for Chancellor Mkhize Ukabazela, and Professor Mzibi for being such a lovely host to me and to my team in his stead. I also want to thank Ms. Norma Zondo and her team, including Director of University Relations, Ms. Solisa Zulu, and the Manager of Events and Protocol, Ms. Pam Adams, for all their help in coordinating today's program. I remember how very busy universities get at this time of year as you prepare for final exams and graduations. And for a university of this size, with 5 campuses across this great province, I know that that is no small endeavor. So I want to sincerely appreciate all the effort that has been given to bring this gathering together today. And thank each of you, particularly your students who are here in the room when you probably should be studying for exams, for being with us today and to be part of this great conversation about our local and international community. So today, I want to talk to you about transformational change. And following what I hope we all will agree will be some brief remarks, I look forward to an opportunity to engage with all of you in some questions and answers in what I hope will be a robust and fruitful discussion. Over our next few minutes together, I would like to share with you more about me as a person and about my personal relationship to education, to social transformation, and to South Africa. As the U.S. ambassador here in the country, you might not be surprised to learn that South Africa is indeed one of my favorite countries in the world. But what you might not know is that Durban is truly one of my favorite cities in the world. I've been here a lot. It feels like home. Some of you might even have seen me on social media, how I enjoy the occasional bunny chow. but I promise never to have it with chips ever again, for those of you that saw that faux pas. So while I look forward to speaking to several universities and public audiences across the country about issues of shared interest between the United States and South Africa over the next few months, you should know, as I think you've been told, that I insisted that my very first university stop be here in Durban, and specifically at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I think we can all safely agree that there is indeed something unique and special about the culture, diversity, and history of KwaZulu-Natal. As my dear friend and the founder of the African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, Dr. Vasu Gownden, who joins us here today, as Vasu often reminds me, KwaZulu-Natal is indeed a cradle of learning that has inspired social justice and democracy work across the continent for decades. And if you think about it, that makes an awful lot of sense. KZN is the home of John Dube and the first African ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize, Chief Albert Luthuli. KZN is where a young Steve Biko came to study medicine at the then University of Natal, and where he joined the National Union of South African Students. And KZN is where a young lawyer by the name of Mohandas Gandhi, appalled by the realities of racism in South Africa, where he cut his teeth on activism, developing philosophies on nonviolent protest that would not only change this country, but his home country in India and my country, the United States of America. Those teachings created a ripple effect that transformed the worldview of theologians like the great Howard Thurman. Thurman, during his tenure as dean of the Marsh Chapel at Boston University, would go on to mentor a young doctoral student named Martin Luther King Jr. These principles, in the hand of King, working with young student activists, informed a civil rights movement that transformed the United States, shaping a whole generation who would become the very first generation born after America's version of apartheid, Jim Crow, in the American South. And one of those people born into that generation was a young man raised in Jacksonville, Florida, who is standing before you here today. So, as you can see, in many ways, by coming here to KwaZulu-Natal, I very much feel like I'm coming home. And I hope you all can now understand why I wanted to speak to you today here at one of the largest, oldest, most diverse, and most transformed universities in all of sub-Saharan Africa, the University of KwaZulu-Natal. You are steeped in and surrounded by history that has shaped your province, that has shaped South Africa, and that has shaped the rest of the world. This includes the very building we are sitting in today, aptly named after the mother of Soweto, Ellen Kuzwayo. Professor Mzibi, I can understand after the wonderful tour that you provided to me of this Edgewood campus earlier today, why the university chose to anchor their School of Education in the legacy of such a powerful woman. By the way, my grandmother used to tell me that God only picks special people to be women. Yes? Yebo. Mama Kuzwayo gives us a concrete example of a social justice crusader, using her multidisciplinary work as a teacher, a social worker, a community organizer, and a children's rights activist towards the single goal to end apartheid in her country. Furthermore, her writings, including the seminal Call Me Woman, one of the first autobiographies published by a black South African woman, chronicled the South African government's human rights abuses against the majority population, helping to raise awareness of the suffering that apartheid brought to nearly every South African household. And writings like these show us where the seeds of transformational change begin: in faith, in education, and in a love of country that believes that our nation can and should do better by its people. We must never forget the learning, listening, and critical thinking taking place in institutions like this one, that is then taken out there into the world. And that it is that which changes attitudes, changes perspectives, and changes behaviors. We see this in those great minds who studied medicine, religion, the law, and social work, amongst others, and put their learning into action to transform both South Africa and the United States. I see it in the faces here today. Many of you students studying fields like education, political science, and international business, who have dreams of leveraging your education to change the trajectory of your life, to change the trajectory of your family, and to change the trajectory of your nation. I am certain that this room is full of people who read the headlines every day. You see the news both here in South Africa and overseas about politics, about the economy, about energy, about climate crises, about wars, about famine, about all manner of things. And I wouldn't blame any young person that feels a twinge of uncertainty when it comes to their future. And between you and I, you are not alone. It is a feeling that we all face when we come out of school, wondering if the tools that we have been equipped with in the classroom will be enough to help us face the challenges and the daunting tasks that are unique to our generation. And I'd be interested to hear in our Q&A session momentarily what those concerns are for you. Believe me, I wish that as ambassador I had a magic wand that could miraculously remove any uncertainty that we all face. It would make my job in diplomacy a whole lot easier. But while I don't come bearing any magic, what I can tell you, based on my own journey and my family's legacy, I can promise you that our transformational change has been marked by an unwavering faith in three things: faith in God, faith in education, and in our case, faith in the United States of America. First, our first foundational faith has been our faith in God. One of the most influential religious thinkers in America today is the evangelical theologian Reverend Dr. Esau McCaulley, who is also a professor at Wheaton College in the state of Illinois. Recently, Reverend McCaulley wrote the following, quote, "There is no bigger rebellion or miracle in the history of the United States than that of the black Christians who saw in the very book used to justify their oppression a testimony to a God who disagreed. There is no greater audacity than their use of that Bible to construct almost from scratch a Christian anthropology that demanded a recognition of black worth." End quote. Well, my family's enduring faith in God has sustained us for generations. That faith defined our purpose as a family even when circumstances conspired to conceal it. Our faith literally shined a path, guiding our family's journey. And in the words of the great scholar diplomat James Weldon Johnson from over a century ago, who hails from my hometown and indeed my home church in Jacksonville, Florida, who wrote in the epic poem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, quote, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Our second faith has been in the power of education. I have seen firsthand how education can not only change individual lives, but whole communities and entire nations. I see that the motto here at UKZN is, quote, inspiring greatness. It reminds me of the motto of the United Negro College Fund in the United States, which I memorized as a small little boy, in which was, quote, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. I remember that my grandmother would light up when, as a stern 3-year-old, I would walk up to my grandmama and say, Grandmama, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. But for me and for my family, this wasn't simply a tagline. It was the foundation of our progress as African Americans in the United States. What is important to note is that my grandmother and her mother, my great-grandmother Hodrick, were both educated by the great Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, a heroine from the great state of Florida, who transformed education and education policy in the United States by insisting for inclusion of blacks and black women in particular in higher education. As a result, my grandmama and my great-grandmama both became teachers. And through their encouragement, my father attended Morehouse College in Atlanta, the same college which produced the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And in 1970, my dad went on to become the first African American to graduate from the University of Florida School of Medicine. And for her part, my mother earned both her bachelor's degree and her doctorate degree in educational leadership from Florida A&M University, a historically black university that in many ways is very much like the University of KwaZulu-Natal. As a result of faith and hard work that spans several generations, I have become a fourth-generation college-educated African American and a fourth-generation educator. I am grateful to have graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, to have served in the U.S. Navy, and to have earned graduate degrees from the University of Cambridge in England. My wife, who was born in Ethiopia but grew up in Illinois after her family immigrated to the United States, became a physician, specializing in critical care medicine. But before moving to the United States, my wife's father grew up as a shepherd boy in the highlands of Ethiopia, region of Tigray. And thanks to the generosity of a relative, he attended boarding school in Addis Ababa and studied engineering at Addis Ababa University. He became the very first Ethiopian student to earn a Fulbright scholarship to study in the United States of America, where he earned a master's degree in civil engineering at Purdue University in Indiana, not far DVC from the University of Iowa. Now, I am proud to announce this summer that my older son will start working on his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology, otherwise known as Georgia Tech in Atlanta, marking the 5th generation of college education for my family. And so it goes. from a time when it was once illegal in much of America even to teach black people to read, until the present day, where education has transformed our family and those we have touched. It has taken us from the rural highlands of Ethiopia and the segregated towns of America's deep south to allow us to serve our country and others around the world, and setting up the next generation to do the same. This is one of the reasons why I am such a strong advocate for education at every level, including TVET and vocational training. Because beyond my passion for education, I know that it also happens to be both good public policy and good foreign policy. If anyone here hasn't already done so, I strongly encourage you to visit the U.S. Embassy website and to speak to my team here at the consulate in Durban about the Fulbright Student and Fulbright Scholar programs. These are prestigious and highly competitive educational exchange programs with world-class U.S. colleges and universities. And as my family's story illustrates, they can open you up to countless possibilities. But before I move on to my next point, I must make one small caveat to my remarks about education. We've all heard that knowledge is power. But I agree with the saying that knowledge is not power until it is applied. Transformational change cannot stop simply at learning. It also requires action, preferably through thoughtful collective action rooted in partnership and collaboration. I was particularly struck by a quote that I read on the wall in the admin buildings just across from our venue here today. In it, Mama Kuzwayo asks a question that I think remains relevant for all of us today. She asks, quote, "How can I remain quiet when I see the choices open to the younger generation constantly restricted, their hopes fading into dreams, and their dreams becoming nightmares?" I think the answer to her question is simple. We cannot and must not remain quiet. We each must speak out against injustice and corruption. We must speak up when we see wrong actions as well as inaction that threaten the well-being of our communities. That is not only the responsibility of government or those closest to the positions of power. In my experience, that message is often the clearest and most effective when young people come together and demand change. A few years ago, when I served as Vice Chancellor and President of the University of the South, which is colloquially called Swanee, after the name of the place where it's situated, I was consumed with the unprecedented task of preparing students to return to campus amidst a global pandemic of biblical proportions and following the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Talk about a time of incredible uncertainty. And as you all remember, the heinous events on the streets of Minneapolis, not far from where Consul General Ann Lene grew up, touched off a firestorm of protests around the world. As Vice Chancellor, I wrote an article in which I encouraged fellow university leaders at other institutions to prepare for another monumental change facing both our students and our institutions. And that was for the continued fight for racial justice in America. I wrote an article, which you can Google later if you want, where I reminded my colleagues and my fellow US citizens that the young people who were protesting in the streets that summer were not simply looking for progress, they wanted change. And I went on in that article to list several resources that we collectively had to draw upon in the US higher education system to help our university communities grapple with these challenging and urgent questions of race and equality. I'm glad to say that the University of KwaZulu-Natal has also been on the forefront of wrestling with questions of social justice and social cohesion here in South Africa. The School of Education has an outreach team working to teach both teachers and community leaders methodology and pedagogy around social cohesion, thus improving the impact of their work. I know the need for these types of efforts were made abundantly clear following the social unrest that happened in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng in 2021, not long before I arrived in South Africa as ambassador. In the months following the unrest that devastated many communities right here in Durban, Professor Mzibi and his team saw a critical need and crafted a signature program to highlight productive ways to engage in issues of race through higher education institutions. Today, I am pleased to announce the launch of the U.S.-South Africa Racial Justice Fellowship, a university partnership initiative led by University of KZN School of Education and Columbia University's Teachers College, and funded by the U.S. Mission to South Africa. The U.S.-South Africa Racial Justice Fellowship aims to establish a new Institute for Racial Justice leadership between those two world-class universities. And over the next several months, this program will equip American and South African master's and PhD students with the knowledge, the skills, and the support to advocate for racial justice in our educational system and society through research and practical action. The Institute will be a hub for debate, for knowledge generation, for teaching, for skills building, and mutual support for a cross-cultural community of scholars engaged in researching and addressing racial injustice, both in and around university campuses. Following in-person exchanges in both countries, fellows will continue the conversation with each other virtually. And more importantly, they will continue the work in their local communities. I want to recognize the master's and doctoral students selected to participate in this fellowship who are here with us today. If you're here, would you raise your hand? 1, 2, don't be shy. Fantastic. You're examples of leaders who want to put your education into collective action. And in doing so, you are also building strong international partnerships that I know will serve you and the rest of your lives and for the rest of your professional careers. This brings me to one of the last aspects of transformational change that I want to discuss today: faith in our country and in our fellow citizens. Personally, my family and I have consistently put our faith in our country, the United States of America. And if you all are anything like the people with whom I have interacted throughout my career across the continent, I'm guessing that you can tell me about your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents and eventually your ancestors going back several centuries. Your Highness, I'm sure that's true for you. For me, unfortunately, I can only go back to my great-grandparents' generation. Before their time, our family's history was lost to the mist of time in the abyss of slavery and segregation that marked the history of the American South for over a century following the end of the American Civil War. Yet, we have always believed in the promise of America, both as descendants of those held in bondage, and for my wife's family, as refugees who are welcomed to America's shores. In my humble opinion, the Founding Fathers got the idea of America right, even if they got the practice grievously wrong in matters of equality for much of our history. But therein lies the genius of America. We constantly examine the distance between our professed ideals and our lived reality, and we commit ourselves to constantly work to close the gap between the two. Our Constitution, drafted more than 230 years ago, begins with the quote, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." I stand here today as a product of a dream that one day my nation will live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I can confidently say that my achievements represent my ancestors' wildest dreams. And for you students and young people here in the audience, I want you to hear me well. And so do you. You are your ancestors' wildest dreams. As students at this great university, you are the living embodiment of what your ancestors and grandparents and parents' struggles in the battles against colonialism and apartheid were all about. The fact that you are here together means that you are a shining light on this nation's righteous path. Faith in God, faith in education, faith in country. That is my personal recipe for transformational change. So how have these beliefs about transformational change impacted my tenure as U.S. Ambassador to South Africa since my arrival last August? Well, let me say this. The U.S. mission to South Africa is the largest American diplomatic mission on the continent of Africa. I lead a team of hundreds of American diplomats and South African staff in our embassy in Pretoria and in our consulates in Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. We work to advance U.S. foreign policy objectives related to health, economic growth, security, democracy, amongst many other priorities. And like you, we're very busy. It's been a minute since I spent most of my time on campus as a student, maybe 2 minutes. But my assumption is that for you students, that you're trying to keep up with your studies while being involved in extracurricular activities and community projects. And you're also trying to lead a healthy social life, which is a normal thing for a human being to do. And when you're as busy as all of us are, it's very easy to let the work drive you and to react to events on the ground, really just to keep your head above water. And therein lies the difference between progress and transformational change. We in the U.S. mission deal with issues like condemning Russia's aggression against Ukraine, or how to end the HIV epidemic by 2030, and how to reduce how to work with the government of South Africa to reduce economic inequality here in this country. Progress is moving the ball forward on each of these issues. But transformational change is altering the rules of the game if those rules no longer make sense, or playing a different game altogether. Transformational change is more complicated when you need to work with multiple organizations, like we must partner with the government of South Africa, or with companies in the private sector, or with universities like the one I'm in right now. And change often happens more slowly than we would like. So we're faced with the question of when do we accept that we'll only get progress, and when do we take a stand to achieve true fundamental change? I don't have an easy answer for you, but I can tell you that that is a question that I personally face on a daily basis, and that every day is challenging. If you are also facing that question, do not despair. It just means that you are also an agent for change, and that you should keep fighting the good fight. And know that whatever you decide, there isn't just one way to go about working toward transformation. That said, I strongly believe a foundation of shared values and shared vision will help us to work together to enact meaningful change. particularly when we connect around individuals, institutions, and insight. Let me give you 3 examples. 2 will illustrate how we engage with individuals and institutions, and a third will illustrate the importance of insight from Americans and South Africans to achieve transformational change. First, individuals. The U.S. mission here in South Africa cannot and should not, must not, seek to effect transformational change in South Africa independently. Instead, we partner with South Africans to develop a shared vision, how we can support you, and how we can work together to make it happen. Take, for example, Ms. Zibu Masotobe. Zibu participated in the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program in 2015, when she traveled to the United States for 6 weeks to study business and entrepreneurship, to network with fellow entrepreneurs across the African continent, and, as one does, to meet President Obama. As we do with all South Africans who participate in our exchange programs, we have kept in touch with Zibu to inform our efforts to effect transformational change. In 2021, in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, Zibu proposed an innovative program to build entrepreneurship and business acumen in young farmers in KZN. Now, I'm sure this wouldn't surprise anybody who actually knows Zibu, but what impressed me is how this project not only teaches these farmers how to increase yields and market their products. In addition, Zibu changed the rules of the game by empowering these young people to bring other young farmers into the fold and to build stronger agricultural networks. See, Zibu is affecting transformational change right here in KZN, and we are supremely proud of her efforts. Second, yes? Second, institutions. As with individuals, the U.S. mission seeks to identify, work with, and empower South African institutions that are working to achieve transformational change. For example, Innovation Durban's CoLab, which is an incubator strategically situated in Cato Manor Township, which unfortunately did not escape the violent looting and unrest many experienced in KwaZulu-Natal in July 2021. This space, which is located on the outskirts of Durban, aims to provide youth access to tools, equipment, and digital resources to help them become more innovative problem solvers and successful entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, in the midst of the violence, it was completely gutted. With the infrastructure destroyed and with all of its equipment lost, the space was virtually unusable. But thankfully, Innovate Durban and their partners did not waver in the face of uncertainty. Instead, they sought ways to build back better through collective action and partnerships. Under the leadership of CEO and IVLP alumna Aurelia Albert, Innovate Durban leveraged its connections with the surrounding community, the eThekwini municipality, and its partner network to secure the political will and resources to implement a reconstruction plan. In May 2022, thanks in small part to a $20,000 US public diplomacy grant from our consulate here in Durban, Innovate Durban was able to open its doors once again. This location now features a new American space, outfitted with comfortable furnishings, state-of-the-art computers, a maker space with 3D printers, as well as STEM-related books and education materials. In less than 18 months, Innovate Durban CoLab went from the brink of closure to expanding its offerings. But what is most exciting is that they are now positioned to share their knowledge and to share their lessons learned, mentoring newly established innovation incubators in rural KZN. And over the last year, I am proud to report that our two organizations have successfully collaborated to host a program for hundreds of entrepreneurs, conservationists, and civic leaders. putting resources into the hands of local partners and spurring important policy conversations with local government and civil society. Now, this is a partnership between our U.S. consulate here in Durban and between Innovate Durban, and it is being touted as a best practice with offices in Washington, D.C. that are in charge of American spaces. It is literally redefining how we in the U.S. government consider leveraging the power of networks, of public-private partnerships, and of innovation. Innovate Durban is effecting transformational change. And I tell you, I was just there 2 hours before I came here, got to see it firsthand. And I strongly encourage you to go see for yourself what this kind of partnership can do and how it can transform lives. We are thrilled to support their efforts. And in particular, I am proud to announce today that as of last Friday, Washington approved our submission to recognize Innovate Durban as an official American corner and to provide it with an additional $40,000 US to expand our cultural and skills programs. Aurelia, where's Aurelia? Aurelia, I'm so pleased to welcome you and your team to our American Corner family. And finally, Insight. As we saw through the critical role that South African researchers played and continue to play in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, your scientists are truly world-class, and the world needs them. Dr. Evelyn Motoroba is a professor at the University of Zululand who is currently a Fulbright scholar in the bacterial genomics group at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard. A few years ago, South Africa had a countrywide outbreak of listeria, causing loss of lives and serious negative impact on the food industry. Dr. Motoroba's groundbreaking research uses whole genome sequencing to understand antimicrobial resistance in food pathogens. Can you all say that twice fast in the same sentence? It's pretty impressive. Dr. Motoroba's work will lead to interventions that will strengthen food security supply chains and help prevent similar outbreaks. Through her insight, Dr. Motoroba is effecting transformational change, and we are proud to support her and her efforts. So in closing, I'd like to come back to my three faiths that have transformed me and my family. And let me add to them a fourth faith that I've developed over the past year. And that is the deep faith in shared values and connection between the people of the United States of America and the people of the Republic of South Africa. Our governments, to be frank, have not and will not always see eye to eye on every policy issue. But our people, because we share a similar and difficult history, will always share common dreams and common aspirations for a better future. I have witnessed the people of South Africa deal with load shedding, water shedding, floods, crime, COVID-19, HIV, amongst a host of other significant national problems. And when it comes to many of these challenges, like racial justice and social cohesion, the United States has much to learn from South Africa. You're dealing with these difficulties while simultaneously facing governance challenges because the fates of the American people. Somebody changed my papers. I'll start again. You're dealing with these difficulties while simultaneously facing governance challenges that any democracy, including the United States of America, struggles to overcome as we seek to find our way in uncertain times. Yet, over the past year, I have met so many South Africans who are meeting these problems head on with a determination and a spirit that would make our ancestors proud. Many of you may have heard that Vice President Kamala Harris recently completed a visit to several countries on the continent. And during remarks to a group of youth in Ghana, the Vice President stated what most of us in this room already know, that by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will live on the continent of Africa. And as a result, what happens on this continent impacts the entire world. So as I leave you today, I want to echo President Biden, Vice President Harris's optimism about our shared future, a future rooted in the energy, the dynamism, and the potential that each of you young people embody. As Vice President Harris had noted, we in the United States are, quote, all in on Africa. And that's because we believe African nations play such a critical role on issues of global importance, like food security, the climate crisis, public health, and resilient supply chains, amongst others. And because, as a prominent UKZN alumnus and my friend Vasu reminds us, African leadership is critical to global peace and security. And finally, because the fates of the American people and of America and the continent of Africa are interconnected and interdependent. So let me conclude with this. I have faith in South Africa. I have faith in its people, particularly in its young people and its institutions, and in the insight that it will offer to the United States and to other nations of the world. I look forward to continuing to work with South African citizens and their government to make our dreams a reality for this and for future generations. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. I look forward to your questions, perhaps even asking you a few of my own. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Your Excellency, that was absolutely fantastic. I think that many of us here around the room have this shared ideal around the pursuit of peace, pursuit of nonviolence in society, and seeing a South Africa that is thriving. And many of us, I think, around the room are disillusioned